Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here, coming at you from the Knife Center, and today we're looking at some of 2021's best gentleman's knives that you can get your hands on right now. Let's check them out. So when we say gentleman's knives, we're essentially talking about knives that have an air of refinement to them, a little more special than your run-of-the-mill pocket knife or tactical knife. But the best part about them is you don't actually have to be a gentleman to use one. I mean, look at me, after all. Or Thomas behind the camera, for that matter.
No, don't look at me.
Actually, he doesn't own a gentleman's knife, so it's fine. That's cool. But anyway, we've done gents knives videos before. I have a lot of fun doing them, but this is a genre that just keeps on giving, and 2021 has seen a bevy of great new releases in this genre, and given that we're leading right up into gift-giving season right now, these are things that are well worth taking a look at right now. And we're going to start with an affordable knife that, even though the materials may not be extra special compared to some of the other knives on this list, it's still a good option for just 40 bucks. The CEO Flipper from CRKT. Hard to believe that this has just been out this year. The beginning of 2021 actually feels like a long time ago at this point. But this was released right at the beginning of the year. It is a flipper version of the popular thumb stud version of the CEO. It has a lot of traits that I really enjoy in any given gentleman's knife. First off, very elegant blade shape. A little bit on the longer side, although not really. It's about 3 3/8 of an inch long, but the height of it, it's such a narrow profile that it makes it look longer, but it also kind of adds to the classy look, adds to the refined air, because this is not a hard working blade. This is a precise, agile, deft working blade that's going to be able to cut things with precision. Also, one of the things I tend to like on a gentleman's knife, a deep carry pocket clip on this particular guy. Mounted here from the tail of the knife, so it is really deep carry. There's pretty much none of that knife sticking out when it is in the pocket, and it's reversible too. The other nice thing, it's a very subtle clip here. Nothing too gaudy or ostentatious, although sometimes a little bling can be good in a gent's knife scenario, but this guy's gonna be very unobtrusive. It might just look like a pen when it's in your pocket, so people might not even know that you are carrying a pocket knife, which could come in handy in certain scenarios. Now, I mentioned the materials may not be the fanciest out there in order to meet that $40 price point, but it still doesn't feel cheap. You've got injection molded GFN essentially, but it's got very interesting texture, almost wood-like. In fact, if you were to kind of have this sitting out and someone were to see it, they might mistake it for like an ebony, in fact. Blade steel, we've got AUS 8 stainless, solid choice, really precisely ground. And then, of course, the nice thing about the whole CEO series and this flipper as well, the blade, when closed up, completely disappears inside the pocket or inside the handles. You just have that little bit of flipper tab sticking out. Push that tab down, blade flies out very nicely. All right, also released this year, but much more recently, is slightly more upscale alternative to something like the CEO Flipper, and that is the Boker Quaken Air from Lucas Burnley. The mini one especially is, I think, perfectly suited to gentleman's duty. There is a larger version, but for me, kind of 3 to 3 3/8, 3.5 is kind of pushing it for me for a gentlemanly knife. I like things a little bit on the less large size, shall we say. But this knife right here with a blade length just over 3 inches, really nice sweet spot. You do get some upgraded blade steel here. You've got VG10 stainless and a nice horizontal grain. Has a much more refined feel than a typical vertical grain would be, or even a stonewashed finish. It just has a little extra touch of niceness to it. Now, like the CEO Flipper, we've got a liner lock here, ball bearings in the pivot, and we've got a blade that completely disappears inside the handle, apart from, of course, that flipper tab there. We've also got that deep carry pocket clip. Not quite as deep carry, but it is going to be pretty unobtrusive. It is a right side tip up only version on this particular knife though, so you can't really swap this around for left side very easily. You could, but you'd have to do some modification to do it. You also get a lanyard point here on the back, or you could attach a fob or something like that, which that CEO Flipper doesn't offer. But again, we've got excellent action here. The fit and finish is phenomenal. The handle scales over the titanium liners, very classy options. You've got this cocobolo wood. You can also get it with carbon fiber, which, as we'll see in a little bit, always seems to kind of nudge things towards the gentlemanly class, or can, not always, but often does. You can also get it in a nice stone-washed titanium that's going to have some pretty good crossover vibes between slightly more rugged, but still very refined. Of course, all that extra refinement and the materials upgrades will cost you a little bit. This particular cocobolo one right here is about $82.50, so more than double the price of that CEO. But if you're looking for these types of features, I think it's well worth it. All right, next up is another mini version, or in this case they're calling it compact, of a larger knife. This is the Real Steel S5 Metamorph Compact, a premium version coming in at about $178. For that, you've got a lot of upgraded materials here. First and foremost, M390 steel, just over 3 inches long, with this kind of modified Wharncliffe shape. And again, you've got kind of a slender, narrow, tapering profile. The way I like to think of it is this: if the knife blade looks like it's going to make a good letter opener, it's a shape that I think lends itself very well to kind of gentleman's carry. Really nice here for your utility work. Looks really good, and you've got that excellent M390 edge retention as well. Handles, titanium through and through. You've got nice milled texture on both sides. Has a nice upscale vibe. Really nicely done pocket clip here too. Deep carry, and again, has a nice subtle look from the outside. Just very slender, almost looks like it would be a pen rather than a knife. We've got a hidden post style lanyard attachment again. Frame lock for security in this case, rather than a liner lock. It's quite easy to disengage when you want to, but it's going to hold nice and secure until you're ready. And then sort of a top flipper design, which actually I think works really well. I've got no problems with that kind of snapping into action very easily. Just overall very classy presentation. All right, we're going to go back to CRKT now with another option that they released this year. A non-locking knife, the Symmetry, which kind of non-lockers have a bit of an appeal for a gentlemanly style knife. They're a little more intuitive, a little easier to use, and being non-locking, there's kind of, in a way, you kind of limit what you want to cut with it. You're not going to tackle big jobs with it, which in a gentlemanly style knife, you probably aren't going to be tackling big jobs anyway. So it kind of works out synergistically in a way. But this knife right here, like the CEO we looked at before, both designed by Richard Rogers. And this guy also comes in just under 40 bucks. For that, you've got an 8CR series stainless blade. You've got steel handles and inlays which aren't carbon fiber, but it's injection molded with a texture that kind of mimics the vibe of carbon fiber. And you've got blue accents throughout, through the screws, the pivot hardware, the pocket clip, and the little tail piece sticking out of the back. Don't get a deep carry clip in this case. It is going to allow a little bit to stick up out of your pocket, but it's a pretty interesting looking clip at least. You've got a very nice classy color to it and some nice details to admire as well. Now, one of the cool things about this knife, in addition to it being non-locking, you've also got a 2 3/4 inch blade, which means this is going to tick off a lot of boxes if you have to kind of meet local regulations. If you have to have a knife that isn't a locking knife or isn't too big, this is going to fit a lot of the bills for you. Now, as I mentioned, this is a non-locking knife. You've got double detent bars on the inside that kind of hold the blade in that open position. Not to the same degree as like an old school slip joint was, so keep that in mind as you're deciding what you'd like to cut. But the advantage of this style of detent joint is you can integrate a flipper mechanism, which, like the previous knife we just looked at, we've got sort of a top flipper here. You can use it with your thumb, no problem, although apparently I have a problem with it. Or, because it comes all the way to the back here, you can actually do just a traditional index finger flick. We'll say though, don't do it too hard because you could actually bounce back a little bit, but a really nice option and a very classy piece again. I could close out all these knives that way because these are all pretty darn classy pieces. Now, if you'd rather go with a traditional slip joint style for your non-locking knife, new series from Lion Steel this year. This is the JK series, or sorry, the Jack series. This is the JK1. There are some multi-layer versions of this, even versions I think with a corkscrew. But for my money, the classiest is the single blade version in the olive wood handle scale variant, although carbon fiber, micarta and stuff is available. Olive wood all the way for me though. Blade here is just over 3 inches. We've got M390 steel, full flat grind, very fine edge, and very nice clip point shape. Some nice luxurious touches. You've got a crowned spine, which actually goes back through the leaf spring on that slip joint mechanism. So you get that crowned look going all the way down the back. Titanium bolsters accent the wood piece very nicely. And then when we go to close it, no half stop, you've just got a smooth, consistent travel all the way through. Very nice piece to carry, nestles into the hand pretty well. It's not a super flat carry, but it's not too bulky either, and you've got that excellent slicey blade to go with it. Nice thing about this is the price. When you compare it to some of the next knives we're going to look at, which use simpler steels, it's not a huge jump up to get the powder metallurgy steel here. The price on this guy, just about 129 bucks. All right, when you're talking classic slip joints, we gotta talk about Case Knives. So many of their knives actually make fantastic gentleman's knives in my mind, but these are a couple of my favorites from this particular year. The first is very new to us here in the building. Just within the last couple weeks or so, these have arrived. The pocket-worn Crandall Jig Gray Bone series. This particular one is the Mini Trapper, comes in about 60 bucks. And the reason I like to show this one is it does have 2 blades. Yes, you've got a kind of a spay blade, long spay blade here on one side, but you've also got this very slender, kind of muskrat styled clip point blade, which I think is a fantastic place to start for a gentleman's knife. It's got a very elegant, kind of sinuous feel to it that is just super classy to my eye. Blade length on these is about 2 3/4 as well, so it's gonna come in under that 3-inch length. You've actually got Case's carbon steel, their CV steel on this particular guy. And as I just demonstrated, you've got a half stop along the travel of these blades, which in my mind, I like that. I feel like that's even classier and even more satisfying when you go to open and close that knife. And the gray jig bone, it's a nice subtle look too. Kind of like the Stonewash Titanium I was talking about earlier. This is a style I think is going to go very well or walk very well between worlds, both a gentlemanly side as well as a slightly more rugged option. Now, if you want to go even fancier on the handle scales with your Case, I'm a big fan of their Kieranite options. They call this a Patriot Kieranite because it's red, white, and blue, shown here on a copper head, which comes in about 70 bucks. Now, you don't get that muskrat styled clip point, but you still do have a very classic clip point that's not going to raise too many eyebrows, paired with a smaller blade, just a standard pen blade there. Case's 420 HC, roughly equivalent stainless steel on these guys. But the thing that I really like about these knives, in addition to that half stop, is that Kieranite, because it's not just for looks actually. This is essentially a poured acrylic, and this is one of those materials that has the kind of odd characteristic of, if you're sweaty and holding on to this, it actually feels a little bit grippier. Micarta kind of does the same thing, but Micarta sure doesn't look as classy as this does. All right, let's move on to some flippers with the Finch Knife Company Cherry Bomb here, which has, they don't call it a Kieranite handle actually, so I'm not sure if this is like brand name Kieranite, but it has a very similar kind of poured resin or poured acrylic style handle inlay on this particular guy. And prices on these come in about $135. But you have a nice looking material there. They've also got versions with like red jigged bone, which I think these ones, this resin handle here looks a little classier to my eye. Stainless steel handle, stainless steel frame with bolsters there integrated with it. Horizontal grain on those bolsters, which you see echoed in the blade itself, which is a 154 CM steel, about 2.6 inches, and a little bit of a kind of hybrid blade shape. It's a little bit fatter at the top or at the heel, but does come to a very narrow point. So it's not a super overbuilt style of knife for sure, but this is one that has, or feels like it has a little more strength behind the shape. Now, part of that feeling also is because of the handle here, which isn't super slim. You've got a little bit to kind of hold on to here, even though it's about, for me, kind of a 3-finger grip. I do have a little bit of my, my pinky finger off the tail end here, but I can kind of choke up and get a pretty full feeling grip on it if I really needed to push this blade through something a little thicker. But then when I need to, with that nice acute tip and this short controllable length, I'll be able to get some very precise things done with that tip. No deep carry clip on this guy either, but you do have a milled titanium clip, which is definitely a more premium feature, and especially if you're around knife people, something that's going to set this guy apart. Only thing left to talk about now is the action, which this is a ball bearing flipper, so you probably know just about how it feels when you flip it, and you'd be right. It flips very nicely. All right, next up in titanium flipper land, we've got the Ace Riv from Giant Mouse Knives, coming in about $220 right now. For that, you've got a 2.5 inch blade. There are some places out there that you still do need something just under 2.5 inches. It's a great option here. You've got Elmax steel, really excellent edge retention. Bit of a slightly more aggressive shape here, or a more kind of heavy duty shape, but it is scaled down to this nice size. And overall, I just think this thing presents in a very classy way. The titanium handles are contoured a bit, so you get a little bit more of a luxury feel in the hand, and very clean. You've just got the 2 screws here at the back for the back spacer and the single pivot screw there. So it's not a real cluttered looking design, very clean in a good minimalist kind of way. Flipping over to the back, not completely deep carry on the clip, but pretty close. You've got the nice classy wire clip construction. Again, something that looks very good and very classy from the outside looking in. This knife also has a crown spine and a little bit of jimping out here, just above the thumb hole here. So if you were choking up a little bit using the tip on a surface, it's going to be a very natural place for my index finger at least to land, and you get that traction out of it very nicely. Speaking of blade performance, the slicing is going to be very nice thanks to this high flat grind. And if you really need to get a fuller grip on this knife, behind the flipper tab, kind of a 3-finger grip, but you do have space in the generously sized finger choil if you wanted to bring your index finger up and get a slightly more solid grip going on. Again, last thing to talk about is the opening action. 2 options here essentially. You've got the flipper tab and you've got that thumb cutout, which you could use for just typical thumb opening. You probably do the middle finger flick fairly easily with, or you could just go ahead and use that standard flipper tab. All right, next up we'll go to something quite a bit more affordable, a new Brad Zinker design from Civivi. This is the bow, and this fancier version comes in just under $80 right now. And you get it with two handle options essentially. Both of them are shredded carbon fiber, or I guess this is more of a marble texture in fact, but you get hints of color popping through. Blue in this case, but red is also available. The handles are fairly neutral in their shape, like several of the knives we've looked at so far, but of course not the Giant Mouse we just looked at. Nestles in quite nicely. You've got a blade here that's under that 3-inch mark. You've got Nitro V stainless steel, really good option, some good toughness there, so it can take a very thin edge very easily, and the edge is going to last a pretty good amount of time too. Blade closes up not quite as completely as something like the executive styled CEO flipper we looked at earlier, but pretty close, and it's also going to carry very narrowly in the pocket. Fairly deep carry pocket clip here, right side only in this case. Ball bearings in the pivot. Excellent flipping action. A lot of good stuff going on here. I love that blade shape. I love the full flat grind. I love what Brad Zinker does in general. So this was definitely on my short list for my favorites this year. Now, if you like this style of blade, this kind of shape right here, but you want something more premium, Civivi's more premium sister company, We Knife Company, actually more their parent company, has a great option right here. This is the Smooth Sentinel. As you can see, very similar blade shapes, both of them just under that 3-inch mark with a full flat grind, even the same kind of stone-washed finish on these 2 knives. But you get a lot of upgrades with the Smooth Sentinel. Case in point, that blade is 20 CV stainless steel, powder metallurgy stuff, really excellent edge retention. Right up there, same stuff as this M390, just made by a different company. So these 2 so far, definitely some of the edge retention champs on this particular lineup. Same great shape, same great full flat grind, just even more edge retention to boot. Handles are titanium, and there are several inlay options, but the kind of classiest is definitely the carbon fiber option. Both sides of the handle with a marbled carbon fiber just has a really nice shimmer to it. Similar to the bow, pretty easy to control handle, very neutral, but a little bit more going on visually. The frame lock, of course, is going to give you a little bit more rigidity or sturdiness than the liner lock on the bow. But likewise, we've got ball bearings in the pivot, and we've got great flipping action. But the price on this guy with the marbled carbon fiber, just over $200, but there is a blacked out blade version with some nice wood handle scales for about $185. That's got kind of an old school firearm look that I really appreciate. But depending on who you are, that might not quite be as gentlemanly. All right, next up, we're gonna go super premium for a knife that isn't gonna be around for too much longer, I think, just because this is a more limited run. Liang Ma designs the L1 Flipper. And like I said, much more expensive. This guy right here, just over $600. For that, you are getting a carbon fiber handle, a shredded carbon fiber in this case, and you're getting S90V blade steel. So that right there instantly makes this, more than anything else we've looked at so far, definitely the edge retention king. You've also got an integral titanium construction. It's a single piece, front to back, no separate spine, no backspacer, no barrel standoffs or anything like that, just with a little bit milled out to make space for those excellent looking inlays on both sides of the knife. Classy milled clip here. You've got a ball bearing point there on the end, kind of ups the elegance of it a little bit. Frame lock for security, and a nice profile when it's closed up. Similarly to the Finch we looked at earlier, it's not a super slim knife. You've got a little bit of girth there. So if you needed or desired a gentlemanly knife that has just a little more oomph behind it, this is something that is going to be definitely worth a look. Now we've got one more knife on the table, and I think just by default, this is technically would have to be called my favorite because I've actually purchased one of these myself, a new version of the Benchmade Bug Out with contoured carbon fiber scales and an S90V blade. So you get that excellent edge retention paired with this classic slice-friendly profile that the Bug Out does provide. And the price on this guy, if you're looking for that high-end S90V edge retention, but you don't have the $600+ to spend, this guy right here, not cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but at $255, significantly more affordable than that Liang Ma. You've got your 3¼ inch blade, which for me, again, that's kind of my sweet spot. This is kind of, for me personally anyway, about as bulky as I like to go for a gent's knife. Enough there to get things done without seeming overbearing. You've got that excellent thin blade stock for great slicing, and you've got a handle here with the carbon fiber construction has a much more solid feel than the Grivory versions of the base Bug Out, but it's not going to be something that's too bulky in the pocket. You've got your deep carry clip. Could be a little bit classier potentially for you, a gentlemanly scenario than the black coated clip or the black oxide clip here. It's always fixable in the aftermarket though. And you've got that Axis lock, which is, let's be honest, my favorite lock out there. I love the flickability of it. Even if you don't want to do that, you can certainly be more deliberate. Certain gentlemanly situations, you might want to be a little more cautious. But like I said, all of these knives are great knives. They're all very classy. But since I bought one, I'll put it out there. I definitely have to crown this one as my preferred version for 2021's best gentleman's knives. Let me know what your favorite gentleman's knives, either from 2021 are, or heck, let's open it up. What are your favorite gents knives in general? If you want to get your hands on any of these guys, we will leave links in the description as always. That'll take you over to knifecenter.com. Make sure you sign up for our Knife Rewards program, since if you're gonna spend your money on one of these knives today, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center, signing off. See you next time.